What's the unintentionally funniest thing you've ever heard a child say? Story 1. Family went to Olive Garden restaurant. Waitress delivers the obligatory bowl of salad with the salad tongs. I proceed to start mixing up the salad with the tongs. My 4-year-old daughter sits up and stares into the bowl and then looks up at me and asks, "What are you looking for?" Story 2. 3-ish-year-old girl on an airplane loudly announced, "My daddy left me and mommy, and I don't know where he went." Then she pointed to her mom's tummy and told everyone there is a baby in there too. The mom had to remind her to tell the rest of the story, that daddy had taken another plane to a different city for work, but would be meeting up with them in a few days on their family vacation. Edit. While thanks to everyone for blowing up this comment, it made me smile again remembering the story, so I'm glad everyone enjoyed it as much as I did that day. Story 3. We were bringing lunch to the teachers at school and my daughter announced that we made a special soup for Mr. S because he's a virgin. Mr. S is a vegan. Story 4. My partner's 5-year-old daughter was watching me do my makeup in the mirror and she said, "You look like an angel." That's the sweetest thing she's ever said to me, so I gushed like a teenage girl and thanked her with a big grin on my face. Then she elaborated, "You look like you're dead." Story 5. My 7-year-old son slept on the top bunk of a bed with his brother down below. He's a bit of a tank and was hitting around 28 kilograms. One night he asked me to put him to bed, and I said, "Mate, you're getting really heavy. I'm not sure that I can lift you all the way up that high anymore." He looked me straight in the eye and said, "Dad, you just need to believe in yourself." Story 6. My niece was 3 when my nephew was born. She came up to me and my girlfriend when we visiting my sister in hospital and said, "So am I not allowed to punch the baby in the head?" Story 7. I once heard my son, who just watched the old Star Wars series, ask my grandfather, British WW2 vet, what side he fought on in the war, and my grandfather responded with the Empire. My kid cried for days because he thought his great-grandfather fought for the Galactic Empire. Story 8. Just happened last week when Kiddo 2 was born. I brought Kiddo 1, just turned 5, to the hospital for the first time to meet his new bro. He takes one look at the sleeping baby and says he's so cute. Then he turns to my wife, looks her in the eye and says with genuine concern, "How's your vagina?" The nurses lost it. Edit. A lot of people seem to think a 5-year-old boy wouldn't know what a vagina is or where babies come from. This is kind of sad. Educate your kids, people. Story 9. One little girl asked her friend, "Does your mom have a baby in her belly?" The woman was quite overweight. The kid says, "Oh, there's every possible thing in there. Sorry, it's hard to get it across in English, but it was hilarious." Story 10. So my almost 4-year-old has a speech delay, and she pronounces horse as and she has a My Little Pony toy that she takes everywhere. Anyway, she dropped it in Walmart one time and I didn't notice and was walking away. She was in the cart and she yells, "Mommy, get my..." Oh god, I laughed so hard, as did a lot of people around me. Obviously had some nasty looks, but whatever. She thinks she says horse. We're working on it. Watching Star Wars with my 5-year-old nephew. Great scene with Darth Sidious sitting in his little char facing out to space. You can't see him and all you can see is the chair before he does his big spinning chair reveal. Sidious says something like, "A Skywalker, I've been waiting for you," or something. My nephew turns to me, shrugs his shoulders and says, "Talking chair, don't know why this caught me but I lost it." Edit. For those I've offended, I apologize for dead naming the emperor. I live in new age of political correctness I just can't keep up with. Story 11. At the zoo watching a rhino and a young family is next to me. Out of the blue the rhino got an erection. Something brought to my attention by the young boy yelling, "Whoa, look at his wiener. Is yours that big, daddy?" The father turned bright red while the mother laughed her off. Story 12. My niece likes to sing in front of everyone at holiday gatherings. When she finishes she says, "Everybody" instead of "Everybody clap." Always gets a good laugh. Story 13. I'm a mailman, and one day a little girl came to the door to get the mail. She looked up at me with a big smile and said, "Thank you, whaleman." I spent the rest of the day thinking about how much more interesting of a job that would be. Story 14. I used to ask my little cousin around 5 to 6 years old at the time if she knew any swear words. She started listing off all the bad words she knew. Hate, stupid, wait, what was that last one? It escalated so quickly and nonchalantly that it had me dying. Story 15. Uncle had a tick in his ear when we went camping. My nephew pronounced tick as and would not stop shouting, "Uncle Tom's got a big OL in his ear," over and over again. Story 16. Dad, what's that? That's a cemetery. What's a cemetery? That's where they bury dead bodies. Oh, a few minutes past, Dad. Yeah, where do they bury the heads? Story 17. Went to McDonald's once and headed for the bathroom. Just before I opened the door this small child busts through with his friend and he yells, "I ain't washing my hands. I'm a bad boy." This happened 4 years ago and I still laugh about it. Story 18. I worked as a teacher's assistant for a year and I have a weird last name, so I got the kids to call me Mr. A if they couldn't pronounce it. But some kids still tried to say their interpretation of my name. One of the kids said, "Mr. A, I'm gonna start calling you Mr. Avocado, because I can't remember your last name, and I don't like avocado." Story 19. My husband was pulled up for random breath testing. As the cop told us we were fine to go on our way, my youngest child piped up, "Well, that went better than last time." Turns out he meant last time hubby was RBT'd. He bitched about it because it was raining and the shoulder he was pulled up on was boggy. Story 20. As a child, my brother didn't like peanuts. As a treat after dinner one Sunday we had cornettos. My brother peeled the wrapper off and then turned to my dad and said, "Dayawad, can you nibble my nuts off?" My aunt wet herself laughing. Story 21. In the Lebanese dialect Arabic, the word "airy" means my. A young Lebanese boy was counting to 100 in English. When he got to the 80s, instead of saying 80, He replaced it with Airy, Airy 1, Airy 2, Airy 3, Airy 4, Airy 5, Airy 6, Airy 7, Airy EIR, Airy 9. We lost 2 people that day due to excessive laughter. Driving through Iowa with my 5-year-old. There's like 100 corns here, Daddy. Story 22. Son's name is Skylar. Daughter is 6 years old. Wife was going back to college and we were talking about scholarships and we noticed that our daughter is crying. I mean, she's wailing and sobbing. After we get her calmed down, we ask her what wrong. She says she doesn't want us to send Skylar to the moon. WDF, why would we do that, we ask. She responds, why else would you need a Skylar ship? Story 23. In the middle of my local zoo there's a big clearing where they let all the African animals except the carnivores, obviously mingle, in an attempt to recreate a natural habitat. Last time I was there I was standing near a little boy and his mother, and the kid was in awe of what he was seeing. Suddenly though, he saw something that got him really excited. Look mummy, look, he shouted, pointing. It's a pigeon. The thing is, he was absolutely right in an African setting. An English pigeon is the exotic one. Story 24. My kid and me. After a large blowout I had with my ex-wife over something stupid, our 2 daughters heard my ex unloading on about how she hates me and how terrible I am, and I knew when she gets like that I have to walk away. She would say some pretty cutting things. Anyways, I am angry and I go sit on the couch in the living room with the lights off. My 4-year-old walks up to me. Dad, no one likes you. Me, I gathered. Thanks. Mommy doesn't like you. I don't like you. Helen 1, 5 years old, doesn't like you. Mia, thanks. Haha, I played a joke on you. I'm kidding. I don't know what Helen thinks. Story 25. When my daughter was almost 2, she learned the word juice, and it became her favorite word. She didn't always nail the pronunciation, but she was proud of herself every time she said it. One Sunday, after church, I was holding her on my hip having a conversation with a pastor whom everyone in my family and half the church didn't like at all, so my kid, wide-eyed and excited to show off her new word, pointed at the pastor and said juice, only it came out, I swear, I nearly died trying not to laugh out loud right there. That's the day my 20-month-old became my hero. Story 26. My boyfriend's little brother was 6'7" at the time, and had recently learned some anatomy terms. For some reason, he had anus and penis confused, and no matter how many times my boyfriend and I tried to tell him that the anus is in back and the penis is in front, and every other way we could figure out how to say it, he just wasn't getting it. It got pretty loud at one point with my boyfriend yelling no, the anus doesn't pee, and his brother saying something along the lines of why do anuses get bigger when you get older. Eventually, I pulled out my anatomy textbooks and showed him a few diagrams and he finally figured it out. Still the funniest thing ever. Edit, I think he was 7. I don't know if that makes a difference. Story 27. One morning I asked my kiddo, who is 18 months old, what she wanted for breakfast. She's just hit a new talking phase and liked to be asked her opinion. She grins, looks me in the eye and says, fuck, record scratch. Husband and I freeze and look at each other. Sorry sweetie, mommy didn't understand you. What do you want to eat? Grin falls and she gets that stubborn look in her eye. Fuck, husband and I blank stare. Fuck, meltdown, fuck, fuck, tears and snot everywhere. We really try not to laugh at her, but we lost it. We start laughingly accusing each other of slipping up, then she starts really crying, so we sober up, comfort, ECT. I go make a waffle in the toaster for her. When I hand her the waffle the tears stop and we get a big grin. Fuck, thank you. She reinvented the word for waffle. It took months to break the habit and she would regularly start asking for waffles while out and about. I'm assuming my nephew overheard someone say this, but as he is 6 I was impressed at his quick response. He was making a rocket out of cardboard. He said I enjoy making things. My niece who is 4 replied I like making things too. My nephew then said yeah, making mischief. Me and my sister-in-law couldn't stop laughing. My niece was very confused. Story 28. My cousin was a toddler, didn't have much of a vocabulary and was easily excited by everything construction related thanks to Bob the Builder. We were on the sidewalk when this guy is driving by slowly. My cousin starts yelling at the top of his lungs dumb, 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 over and over while laughing and pointing right at him. I presume the guy driving the dump truck was confused. Story 29. It was about 9 years ago, when I was chilling at my sister's place during summer break. She was watching a 60 Minutes interview of recently elected President Barack Obama with my nieces in the room. The youngest at the time, who was 3, saw the screen and then yelled, "Oh, it's abracadabra," when she saw who was talking. Story 30. Had a friend who transported goods for a pharmaceutical company. He jokingly referred to it as delivering drugs in front of his 4-year-old nephew. One day, the friend was supposed to pick his nephew up from daycare. His caretaker asked him conversationally what his uncle did for a living. Of course, the kid spouts off that his uncle sold drugs for a living. This did not go over well with the caretaker. She proceeded to call the mother, who burst out laughing before she could explain. Story 31. I was trying to get my nephew to stop being a loner and socialize with his mates. When he ripped me a new one, how come I have to be like everyone else when you get to be gay? Got a hand at the kiddo. He made a valid point. Story 32. I was a single mom to a 6-year-old daughter and a 5-year-old son, and I was going to buy them treats from an ice cream truck. I gave them limited options, due to the prices, and as we walked away, my son asked why. My little mini-me launched into a story about how we need to be grateful for the blessings we have. Then she said, some kids don't even have toys. Some kids don't have anything to play with except their own bodies. Story 33. When my nephew was a toddler, around Christmas time, he asked me, Uncle Extra Sherman, can we sled ride in? I was kind of taken aback, trying not to laugh. We all heard it. My sister cleared it up though. He was trying to say, can we sled ride down the hill? I was explaining to my 4-year-old son what muscles are and asked him to look at my biceps. He said, hold on, I need to go get my magnifying glass. I didn't even know what to say and my wife is still laughing about it. Story 34. My 18-month-old daughter, my wife, and I went to the beach about a month ago. We are teaching her manners, so when she wants something she needs to follow the formula. Thing I want please. We're teaching her to tell us when she wants to go to the beach, but it's sounding more like, we're trying to correct her but it's not getting through. She gets frustrated with us, and goes up to my mother-in-law who asks her if she wants a treat of some sort, and she just says, bitch please. Story 35. I could tell hundreds of stories from my camp counselor days 10 years ago or so, but one that will always stick out was when I had a group of 6 to 8-year-olds on an exploration hike decently far into the woods, and one of the boys told me he needed to go to the bathroom. Okay Trevor, I asked, do you know how to go to the bathroom outside? Questioning whether or not he understood to do his business out of view from the rest of the group, on a tree or something. Yeah, he assured me while walking away. I just take my peanuts out and go. Couldn't argue with his answer. Story 36. I guess I was 3 or so and pretending to work on my toy semi when I started throwing my tools and said God piece of won't start. Not much has changed. Story 37. I've shared this before, but once when my niece was very little, maybe 3, we passed a bridge under construction and there were 2 big cranes working. She sighed in this resigned way and said, I knew one day the dinosaurs would come and get me. I almost had to pull over. I laughed so hard. Around the same time, we were having a dinner party and my best friend and I were sitting in the living room. She toddles in and I hold out my arms. She runs and jumps into my friend's lap. I exclaim, but pee and blood. She screams and runs towards me. You blood where? And proceeds to check me over for flesh wounds. She's awesome. Story 38. I work as a preschool teacher, so I hear all kinds of hilarious things. Just last week, we were reading The Little Red Hen and I asked what a hen was, indicating the picture. One of my kids shouts out, chicken, and then another raises his arms and yells, we kill chickens. It was so hard to keep a straight face. My all-time favorite. I am working with a younger age group, coloring a project when all of a sudden one of the kids jumps up, grabs his butt, and utters I gotta. After taking him to the bathroom, we talked about how there are better words to say for. Story 39. My 3-year-old semi-accidentally poked her 4-year-old sister pretty hard in the belly button last night. The 4-year-old spent the next 15 minutes complaining that her sister had hurt her in the uterus. Story 40. My 5-year-old discovered dancing, and was dancing constantly. At bedtime, take off your clothes. It's time for jammies. Okay daddy, but I dance while I take off my clothes. Story 41. My daughter when she was 3 walked into the bedroom wearing a shirt, undies, no pants, Barbie high heels and a carrier bag on her shoulder. I ask her where she was going and she says to work and then to Weight Watchers. Story 42. I have a 2-year-old little girl who talks very well for her age. One day I'm standing in the kitchen and she busts through this beaded curtain we have on the door. She's got this real annoyed look on her face and she says son of a and just kept walking by me. Story 43. PLLLAS. I need to see I just love the so much. Please 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 let me go see the fish. My name is Tartar. No not Tartar, it's Tartar. His name is Carter. Are you being sarcasm? I think you are. I need all of your money right now. Right now that man over there. He sells penguins and I need a real one. Some refrigerated truck with a penguin on the side. I pooped on the Christmas tree. And on Superman when I was 4, I told my entire family at my birthday party that my wiener got big whenever I needed to really pee. My grandmother nearly died laughing. Story 44. This kid was at a public pool's restroom at a urinal between his father and an enormously overweight man with his shirt off. The kid says, look dad, that man has bosoms. The dad is horrified, and responds with, no son, that's muscle. I died. Story 45. Was babysitting my best friend's little brother when he was about 4 or 5. We were looking at a book that explained the human body. On one of the pages it talked about the heart. I asked him if he knew where his heart was and he just kinda looked at me, so I pointed to his chest. I asked him again where his heart was and he pointed right to his nipple. I laughed and told him that was his nipple and he had this confused look on his face and yelled nibble. What's a nibble for? Always cracks me up when I think about it. Story 46. A little background. When my daughter was little, she would make any excuse to try to sleep in our bed. We also had a lab named Morty who fell in love with her the day we brought her home from a hospital and followed her around until the day he died. One night she told me, Mommy, I can't sleep in my bed because Morty left all of his dog feathers in it. Story 47. Was at a dinner party at the house of friends who have a 5-year-old whose favorite word that week was. His parents were encouraging him to try the new food on his plate. One of the other guests who's gay made a show of how tasty it was. Kid pointed at him and said, yeah, but you eat everything. You eat. We the guests almost fell apart laughing at that. Story 48. When my daughter was about 12, she told me she couldn't wait to grow up, because she was dying to be able to say bad words. I said, oh yeah, like what word? The T word. What's the T word? I asked. She looks around to make sure no one is watching, leans in, and whispers, I'm now dying, and I say, that's not a T word, that's a F word. Think maybe it'd be a good idea to learn the alphabet before you learn bad words. Yeah, what's the alphabet? The ABCs. Oh yeah, I should learn that first. Miss 6, I don't really like when Nana Ruby wants me to give her a kiss me. Why is that? She's your great Nana and you only see her a few times a year. Miss 6 she has so many lines and saggy bits in her face sometimes they get in my mouth and between my lips. Edit both my kids know they don't have to show affection, kiss or hug anyone they don't want to, even if they are family. The reason I said she's your great Nana and you only see her a few times a year is she said it nowhere near a visit with her, just randomly whilst we were driving. I wanted to know why she came out with that. Story 49 My kid was 4 years old, and a massive Ghostbusters fan. He went to his preschool one day and told all the teachers he was changing his name to Ghost Tips. He was adamant, and every time someone called him by his first name he said, "From now on, please call me Ghost Tips." By the end of the day he had gotten so annoying about it, even the teachers had started indulging him. When I went to pick him up, the teachers were all asking me what the name Ghost Tips meant. I told them I had no idea, until I heard one of the teachers say it from across the room, then it hit me. He likes the latest Paul Feig-directed Ghostbusters movie as much as the original Ghostbusters movie. His favorite character is Holzman, who he had heard use a choice term in the film, but he was mispronouncing it, so yeah, my 4-year-old had been enthusiastically asking everyone at school to call him Ghost. My 7-year-old cousin told me I hope I never become an uncle. When I asked him why he said because all 4 of my brothers are morons, so their sons will definitely be morons too. Story 50 We eat Bovril on bread but mom always calls it Marmite. I ask my 5-year-old what he wants on his sandwich so he says, "Termite please." We were looking through my 21st slideshow and there was a photo of me with an ex-boyfriend, who was white. My husband is darker skinned as he has Lebanese, Italian in his family. My 7-year-old says, "You nearly chose a peach guy to be our dad but you chose a brown guy." 5-year-old You know why I eat blood? So I can have lots of blood in my body so I don't die. 5-year-old When he was 3 or 4 cut his foot open badly and the flesh was hanging out. He got it stitched up and in the following days we went to the shop and he says, "Are we buying meat to put back in my foot?" 5-year-old When I grow up I want to be a police dog. 5-year-old I don't like hate. Hate hurts our brain. 9 years old The girls want to see my 1-year-old sister but I don't want them to me. Why? Him because then they get all excited and hyperactive. My 9 years old told us his clothes had a skid mark from the soup he ate. He meant that it messed but it made us laugh a lot. Story 51 My son and I call each other face. Not sure how it started but anyways, one day we were having our normal back and forth and I said, "You're such a face, I can smell you from all the way over here." He responded, "Oh yeah, can you smell me from Canada?" And I said, "Yes, I can even smell you from the moon." His response was, "Can you smell me from Uranus?" I died. They had been learning about space in school and I guess Uranus stood out to him. He asked me why I was laughing because he had no idea why it was funny. Story 52 I was teaching a kindergarten ESL class in Korea and we were learning about families. After instructing my students to draw a picture of their families I heard one student yell at another, "You can't color your family peach, they have to be yellow." Stealth edit I did not teach them that. Story 53 Watching Shrek with my parents when I was little, and my mom remarked on how funny it was that Donkey didn't have a name aside from Donkey. I argued, "But mom, his name is Steve." My mom asked me how I knew this, so I gently reminded her that at one point Fiona calls him Noble Steve. Couldn't understand why everyone started laughing. Now my therapist's name is Steve and my mom refuses to refer to him by anything but Noble Steve. I will never live this down. Story 54 This requires some backstory, but bear with me. My high school friend and I, now both grown and with kids, happened to be back in our hometown at the same time me to visit family, he for a funeral. I agreed to watch his kids while he and his wife attended the funeral, and took his 2 boys preschool age to the park with my 2 girls, who were a year or 2 older. I should state that, in high school, I tended to answer every request for knowledge the way Calvin's dad did with funny, but obviously wrong statements. My friend wanted to warn his boys of this, so before we left for the park he said, "Don't believe anything he tells you, but listen to what he asks you to do." He hoped it would inoculate them from finding out the sun sets in Arizona or similar nonsense. Instead, of course, backfired beautifully, so it starts out with the kids all climbing a tree. My daughters climb right up, but the younger boys are having some trouble. They ask to be picked up into the tree, and I say, "Sorry, if you can't climb up yourself, it's not safe for you to be there." Hearing this made him determined, and climbed right up after that, at which point he started talking about how great it was that I let him climb the tree. That means he isn't usually allowed to climb trees, so I ask if his mother lets him climb trees. "Oh yes, mom lets me climb trees all the time." "Great," I say, "then I can send her this picture of you climbing the tree so she can see how good you are doing. It'll give you $5 not to send that picture." He has zero hesitation in that statement. An immediate and confident bribe attempt is pretty impressive from a 4-year-old, but I'm clearly in trouble here, so I tell the kids it's time to climb out of the tree, before I find myself in any deeper water with their mom. My oldest daughter straddles the slanting trunk of the tree, and slides down it like a very bumpy slide, but with her legs to either side. My friend's oldest boy stares in shock, and exclaims, "Doesn't that hurt your wiener?" My daughter looks at him confused, and states a fact we have all clearly taken for granted at this point. No. Girls don't have wieners. I didn't think his eyes could open wider, but they did. This was to a 4-year-old who has only brothers, earth-shattering news, and he turned to me to get an adult to make sense of this. At first there was denial. What? Everyone has a wiener. Then came the questions. Do all girls not have a wiener? Do they still pee? How? They still have a butt, don't they? The answer to the last at least seemed to reassure him, but then like Simba in The Lion King, his father's words came back to him. Simba voice, "Don't believe anything he tells you." And thus the joke becomes clear to him, and he's outsmarted me thanks to his father's wisdom. Obviously I was trying to pull one over on him, with this girls don't have wieners thing, so as an act of defiance, he climbs to the very top of the playground equipment, and begins shouting at the top of his lungs, everybody has a wiener. Story 55. My wife and I take our children to see Santa in Macy's NYC. We have a 5-year-old boy and a 3-year-old girl. We get on the elevator to go up and my son says to a 20-something girl as she gets on, "Hey girlfriend, do you want to see my Pokemon?" Story 56. Standing on the train during commute time which was quiet with my kids. My youngest, the age of 4, standing behind me kept saying mommy mommy as if to tell me something urgently. I answered him. He said mommy your booty stank. I started laughing out loud, then so did everyone else. Story 57. My old job from a few years back was right by an elementary school. I worked 9s with an hour lunch and would go down to the plaza on the other side of the school for break. I heard a lot of nonsense walking over there, but the one thing I remember was 2 little girls talking LOOK tiger no, those are rocks. I was cracking up the rest of the day thinking about it, and when it randomly pops in my head I still get a chuckle. Was out to lunch with my fiancée, her parents, and my 4-year-old niece. I gave her a quarter so she could get some Skittles from the candy machine. We are driving home and she is intentionally offering everyone Skittles, and telling me I can't have any. All of a sudden she looks at me and asks what is that in your hand? I show her my empty hand and she says no your other hand. I was pretty confused and opened my other hand to show her there was nothing in it either. She looks at me with this eating grin and says, no Skittles. Story 58. At a friend's house during lunch, his daughter had urgently gobbled down her food and had crumbs all over her face. Her mom, trying to get her to clean up, asked what's on your face, and her daughter snapped back with nothing. What's wrong with your face? Story 59. One of my daughters, who is 12, likes to tease me about how old I'm getting. We were out for a walk the other evening and I told her I had been talking to my dad about her teasing. She said, "Did you tell Grandpa that you have a mental disorder that makes you think you are younger than you are?" I told her she's grounded until she's 22. Story 60. When I was 4, I had seen a lot of PSA commercials of the risks of smoking while pregnant. Then, we went on a family camping trip. My uncle was a smoker and had a beer belly, which can be confusing for a 4-year-old. Apparently, I felt obliged to inform him matter-of-factly, "If don't quit smoking, you're going to kill your baby." He spit out his beer laughing. Story 61. My brother, when he was around 4, saw a woman in a full burqa, not very common in our country, and exclaimed quite loudly that he had just, in fact, seen a real-life ninja. I was mortified. The lady in question laughed. Story 62. Not me, but overheard the story being told by my cousin. She used to work at a church daycare center in the kitchen, and she noticed a little boy with his hand down his pants. She asked him what he was doing, and he told her that he was playing with his and his bat. Story 63. My sister, who had been learning about different religions, sat on my nan's lap and in all earnestness asked her, "Are you a Catholic or a prostitute?" Story 64. At Redbox with my wife, 5-years-old son, and 3-years-old daughter. My wife is reading off the titles: Arrival, Zootopia, Deadpool, Kung Fu Panda 3, Daughter Kung Fu Panda Fui, Howie Quap. Totally caught us off guard. All we could do is laugh. Story 65. I was listening to Metallica on the radio once and headbanging all over the place to annoy my 11-year-old sister, and she yelled, "Shut up. You only like this music because you were born in the 1900s. I was devastated. Another time I was brushing my teeth and I saw her sitting on the floor and using her legs to butt scoot around while singing, making my way downtown. Walkin' fast, faces pass, I'm homebound, do-dee doodle-loo-dee-do, she's crazy. Story 66. I had a speech impediment when I was a child. I used to pronounce my K sounds as TS. My dad told me to tell my uncle he had nice kitties. Apparently, it was hilarious. Story 67. A 4-year-old once explained his family to me. We are 3 children and 2 humans. He confirmed that he indeed did not see himself as a human, since he thought children were not humans. Story 68. I was in a park. 3 children, about 8 years old, were playing together and 2 of them ran away laughing. The third calls them to come back but they kept running. He passed near me and whispered, "Fucking earthlings." Story 69. My son at age 6 was feeling particularly irritable one day and decided to take a nap. He announced he was putting a sign on his door to keep folks away while he slept. "Sounds good, buddy. Hope you feel better after your nap," we said. Then we saw the note. Story 70. Maybe not the funniest, but it was yesterday. I was messing with my 2 sons about not flushing if your brother was about to go as well. I said the if it's yellow let it mellow. If it's brown flush it down. Right on cue, my 4-year-old said, and if it's gray let it stay. I laughed for a while. Didn't even know he understood rhyming yet. Story 71. Friends of mine recently had a new baby and they told me this story about how their older kid was super excited for the new sibling, and for the first few days they brought her home everything was great and nice and lovey. Then like 3rd day or so over breakfast older kid comes over and asks, "So, when's the baby going back home?" Story 72. My dad's girlfriend kid was just about 6 to 7 at that time where Willy Wonka came out, and he loved it. Couple of weeks later we were in Tesco and he sees a midget. He pointed fingers and yelled Oompa Loompa, while his mother dragged him away because it was so embarrassing. Story 73. I was walking down a pier during the whole Pokemon Go craze and I overheard a mildly distressed child, while pulling at his mom's dress, say, "When I'm alone in my mind I like to say 27. Story 74 School play with a bunch of 7-year-olds. One says loudly she looks like a Q, gasps from parents. Teacher rushes up on stage to say it should have been horse. She looks like a horse XX. Story 75 My oldest daughter, she was about 10 to 11 years old at the time, and I were talking about being feeling old. She said, "You're a young lady." I said, "I'm 33. I'm not a young lady anymore." She looked at me with a straight face and said, "You better take the compliments while you can." Story 76 This is taken from one of my previous posts. There was this kid in class who liked to eat paper. So one day in the new term, he asked the new Asian boy for some paper. The Asian boy, in a full Asian accent, ripped out 3 pages from his notebook and said, "Here is breakfast, lunch and dinner."